Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for attending. We are here today with Kamila Issabayeva, and we will be talking about nutrition. Kamila is an Ageless Researcher here with Ageless Partners, and she has an extensive background on nutrition. And she's going to first go into her background and then share us several concepts, and our core focus is to look into actionable insights into how we can slow down and eventually reverse our aging. A little bit about Ageless Partners. We're a research company. Our underlying goal is to help other people decipher the anti-aging code and to accelerate our process to an ageless future. So we appreciate everyone taking the time today to listen, and I will let you take it away, Kamila. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for providing me with this opportunity, and thank you everyone for joining. I appreciate your time and your interest. And my name is Kamila. Originally, I'm from Kazakhstan. I have my bachelor's in biology, and I'm a certified nutritionist specializing in naturopathic recovery. And right now, I'm in the US trying to continue my education in this direction, and I'm interested in bioinformatics. In longevity, I'm interested in incorporating those bioinformatical and computational methods to drive the research in aging and longevity. So thank you again, and without further ado, I'll start my presentation. So this is the second part of our Ageless Nutrition report. And today, before everything, I'd like to disclaim that this is not a dietary advice, and any practices should be consulted with doctors, and because we need to consider all the individual characteristics, because safety always comes first. And I'd like to talk about popular diets and mechanisms behind them. Then I'd like to suggest a general nutrition scheme, I'm sorry. Then I'll briefly talk about supplementation, and we'll have our delicious moment to appreciate the food we can eat while taking care of our bodies. So, is there anti-aging diet for all of us? Is it fiction or a fact? As of now, there cannot be one universal anti-aging diet due to the genetic and environmental characteristics modifying the response to the diets. And it especially comes important when talking about understudied groups and in context of environmental concerns like a worldwide viral pandemic, for example. And also there is a challenge of modeling human aging, which limits our current ability to predictably translate findings of diets. So when we talk about a good diet, what we need to consider is obviously proportion of macro and micronutrients. When we talk about macronutrients, it's we need to have a balanced diet to have enough proteins, fibers, fats, good sources of fats. And also what's especially important in discussing micronutrients, we need to not only consider trace minerals and vitamins, but we also need to consider the source our food comes from, because sometimes environment in which our food was for a certain amount of period, it can overload our food with heavy metals, for example, or some unnecessary or even harmful things that we need to always be aware of. Quite recently, it has been found that time of food intake actually also makes a big deal to the effects of food to our health. And it does not come surprising, because when we think about hormonal fluctuations during the day, it makes sense actually that time of food intake actually plays a big role. And another important and obvious characteristic is the amount of food we eat. We need to consider whether we are not overeating and whether we are eating enough to provide our food with all the necessary components. And regarding the amount of the food we eat, calorie restricting diet is the earliest known life extension strategy. And It is reported to decrease resting heart rate, to improve lipid profile, to decrease inflammation markers. And also, what's interesting is that reduced food consumption was found to benefit adult and older primates, but not younger monkeys. And however, we need to consider that lifespan effects are highly dependent on genotype, age, and body mass index. And it's unclear if these advantages are the effect of slowing down the aging itself, or we're merely avoiding overeating and decreasing our body mass index. And also supplementation is advised because due to calorie restriction, it's most commonly impossible to provide all of the necessary components to our body. Possible side effects of calorie restriction include anemia, muscle wasting, weakness, irritability, depression, menstrual irregularities, and other hormonal changes. Another common approach to prolonging healthy longevity is intermittent fasting. There are different types of those. For example, one can alternate fasting and refeeding days. One can experience diet 5 to 2, for example, 2 days no eating, 5 days refeeding. And there are also time restricted feeding and periodic fasting, or FMDs, which are generally a short period fasting, vegetarian, and with calorie intake decreased from 30 to 50%. Here is the table that briefly summarizes all the macronutrients composition, feeding patterns, and description of all the fasting types. And what's interesting is that most of them are short-term. However, there are also long-term. For example, we can see here prolonged fasting, water only, where up to 21 days of water-only fasting followed by at least a 7 days period of refeeding. And it's considered really extreme, and usually short-term fastings are advised most commonly because sometimes there are risks of cardiovascular diseases, and for example, there is a gallstones disease that risks of those diseases increase with longer periods of fasting. What happens during fasting? So our organism experiences a metabolic switch, and it happens because of a decreased glucose intake from food. Glucose levels in our blood make our organism to deplete the glycogen stores in liver, and after that our organism will rely on lactate, pyruvate, fat-derived glycerol, and amino acids to derive glucose from them. And simultaneously it also will hydrolyze triglycerides to produce free fatty acids, and after the depletion of adipose tissue will eventually those free fatty acids will be converted into ketone bodies in liver. And those ketone bodies are used to produce energy finally. Why do we need ketone bodies? There are some positive effects of ketone bodies on the organism. For example, there is a change of ratio between acetyl coenzyme and coenzyme, and it positively benefits our cell metabolism, lipid metabolism, carbohydrate metabolism, generally metabolism in our cells. And there is also change in ratio between NAD plus and NADH, which helps our mitochondria, and generally because of the increased energy sources such as ATP and NAD plus, our mitochondria have a larger potential to provide our cells with energy. And it also alters epigenetic expression patterns. Another positive effect is that NAD plus activates sirtuins, which, as we probably all know, influence stress resistance, mitochondrial biogenesis, and autophagy. And also one of the ketone bodies, for example, beta-hydroxybutyrate, increases BDNF pathway, which stimulates neuronal differentiation. So what are benefits of intermittent fasting? Obviously, weight loss, improves glucose regulation, lowers accumulation of atherogenic lipids, autophagy, which is a digestion of dysfunctional cellular components, reduces the risk of inflammatory processes, and also normalizes sensitivity to leptin, which is a hormone which tells our body when we are full or when we are hungry. There are side effects of intermittent fasting too. For example, tiredness, decreased deficiency, dizziness, drowsiness, and as I mentioned before, when experiencing fasting for a prolonged period, there is risk of gallstone disease and also cardiovascular diseases. FMD is the next popular approach, is a fasting mimicking diet. Usually people restrict calories for 40%, and it is advised to experience it not more than 6 times a year. And it is not recommended if you fall under the category of pregnant women, if you have deficient BMI, if you are older than 70, if you have compromised function of liver and kidneys, if you suffer from diabetes, autoimmune, or neurodegenerative diseases. And some of the benefits include targeted reduction in visceral fat, decreases glucose insulin levels, decreases arterial pressure, normalizes C-reactive protein and other inflammatory factors, improves hematopoietic stem cells dependent regeneration of immune cells, and also decreases insulin growth factor, which decreases risk of Alzheimer and diabetes. What's important to mention is that all of the studies that are studying FMD are usually done on a particular strain of mice, and that means that we are not yet informed about the strain-related differences of those of the diet to the organism. However, drawbacks include rapid weight loss, reduced blood pressure, hypoglycemia, micronutrient deficiencies, and refeeding syndrome. Hypoglycemia is a condition when our glucose blood levels decrease to below a normal suggested level. And refeeding syndrome sometimes occurs after a prolonged period of fasting. So what do we have from all of these approaches? We can derive nutrient sensing response pathways. Here on the picture, we can see that decreased amino acid and glucose levels decrease our IGF, which is an insulin growth factor. And it inhibits mTOR, which is very popular in aging and longevity research. And it decreases mainly TOR S6 kinase pathway, which in turn increases FOXO nuclear factor, which is usually results in autophagy switch on, ribosomal biogenesis, stress response, cellular protection genes, and including antioxidant enzymes. Here, sometimes glucose can signal through PKA pathway, and we can see it in here, PKA. And we can see that it influences on increase of SODs, which are antioxidant enzymes. And another positive effect is sirtuins, increase of sirtuins activity, which generally means that autophagy is switched on and mitochondrial respiration is stimulated. Another common diet is Mediterranean diet. And what are the key factors in Mediterranean diet? That polyphenols are major beneficial compounds. Fibers are major sources of carbohydrates. Usually good fats are consumed in excessive amounts, and usually 10 portions of fruits and vegetables are recommended, but they are not often attainable, so supplementation is recommended. What are the benefits of Mediterranean diet? It improves arterial pressure, improves insulin sensitivity, normalizes lipid profile, decreases inflammation and oxidative stress, and atherosclerosis. Some of the polyphenol sources include grapeseed extract. It decreases low-density lipoproteins and acts as a vascular protectant. So it decreases accumulation of atherogenic lipids in our vas. And olive leaf extract, it protects heart cells from destruction due to oxidative stress. Pomegranate extract, it increases resistance to oxidative stress in people with high level of cholesterol. Walnut extract, it inhibits oxidation of low-density lipoproteins. Artichoke extract also does the same, and lentil, it is high in vitamin B and also stabilize our blood pressure. Why Mediterranean diet is considered a geroprotective diet? Because there are a lot of pigments in vegetables and fruits that we consume, and most of them act beneficially on our health. So, for example, red vegetables and fruits, they are rich in antioxidants and carotenoids. They improve immune system and help fight inflammation. Orange carotenoids play an important role in fertility, helps ovulation, and regulate endocrine activity. Yellow vegetables and fruits rich in cellulose helps microbiome and improves peristalsis. Green vegetables and fruits help cardiovascular system because it's rich in vitamin K, folates, magnesium, and potassium. Blue-purple pigment improves cognitive functions. It influences on our memory, mood, and it's rich in flavonols and phenolic acids. So there you can we can make a challenge and document how many different pigmented foods you consume during a week. And it's usually advised to consume not less than 50 portions of vegetables, fruits, and herbs. It's also important to think about glycation end products. What are glycation end products? They are products that result from the interaction between proteins and sugars. In order to avoid glycation end products, we need to avoid prefabricated products because they have a high number of glycation end products, roasted meat and especially roasted bacon. We need to avoid fast food. So we need to first identify glycation end products, decrease number of products, we can prepare meat or meals on low heat, for example, and we can stimulate autophagy, which results in destruction of accumulated glycation end products. We need also to consider adequate water consumption. Some of the water functions are key. For example, it provides medium for chemical reaction, it regulates our body temperature, it protects our tissues and especially joints, it excretes unnecessary substances and absorbs water-soluble vitamins. And during excess sweating, it's useful to drink water with salt to avoid dehydration. Test for water deficiency. Sometimes we can use this test to determine if our body needs a little more water. And we can pinch the top of our hand side for 5 seconds. And in normal condition, the skin will straighten immediately. But with the dehydration of the body, the fold does not straighten for a few more seconds. And adequate intake of clean water is 30 ml per kg weight. And we need to limit also coffee, caffeine-containing beverages, and other dehydrating substances. Here I'd like to talk about the general nutrition scheme I advise. Main task of this nutrition scheme is to promote autophagy, which is cleansing cells of cellular debris, to ensure the prevention of age-related changes, reducing inflammation, and also reduce the immunity overload. General nutrition scheme. Here are the list of products that are suggested to exclude. So, for example, wheat and all products that derive from wheat. They include rye, barley, corn, bran, semolina, couscous, bulgur, and some other wheat-derived products. Cow's milk, milk products, cheese, homemade cheese, yogurt, ice cream, chocolate, except dark chocolate, and sweet drinks, and energy drinks, and sweet juices. Alcoholic beverages, obviously, and sunflower oil, corn oil, soybean oil, cottonseed oil, safflower oil, margarine, butter less than 82% fat. Some other excluded products include peanuts, pistachios, fried nuts, seeds, salted or grated nuts, glazed peanut, because some of them contain lignin that is influencing our immunity. Also, we need to abstain from ketchup, mayonnaise, sodium glutamate, vinegar, citric acid, soy sauce, canned meat, and fish too, and semi-prepared products. What are the included products? We can eat sprouts, buckwheat, quinoa, hemp, amaranth, wild rice, brown rice, coconut cream, coconut milk, almond sugar-free milk. Sometimes goat milk and goat cheese can be used but generally it's advised to consume it when you are older than 70. Hibiscus, herbal teas, chocolate, dark chocolate, coffee, black tea, unrefined oils such as walnut oil, amaranth, black cumin, pine nut, hemp, olive, avocado oil, pumpkin seed, and some others. Some other included products include small fish, caviar, quail eggs, lentils, green leafy vegetables, fermented products without sugars, and al dente potatoes, beets, and carrot because of the starch. And so how a typical day would ideally look like. After you woke up, you can have 1 glass of warm water, and after 1 hour or 1 hour and a half, you usually have breakfast, and it should be balanced breakfast. There should be enough proteins, fiber, and fat sources. You can also include carbohydrates during excessive trainings, and after 4 hours, you can have lunch, and again, it should be a balanced lunch, and not later than 3 hours before sleep, you can have dinner, and proteins, fibers, fats. If experiencing insomnia, we can add carbohydrates, and breakfast and dinner window should be no earlier than 12 hours. This is a general rules that are advised for anyone. And general nutrition schemes, fruits and berries are suggested for consumption after the main meal, breakfast or lunch, in order not to exacerbate insulin sensitivity. It is usually suggested not to eat something sweet between the main meals. And recommended fructose serving is 1 bowl of berries and 1-2 large fruits. Drink water, tea, other drinks preferably 15-20 minutes before meals and 30-40 minutes after food. Drinks should not be combined with food. If you need to take medications, dietary supplements, use those 50 ml just to wash down the medicinal drugs. And some important supplementation hacks. So we need to read ingredients carefully because there should not be any starch or other or lactose or other sugars. To absorb vitamin C, zinc, B vitamins, there should be enough acidity in stomach. So we need to, before any supplementation, we need to consider those. For absorbing fat-soluble vitamins, our gallbladder should work properly, and not to mention that gut surface should be in the proper condition. So it's advised first to restore the condition of digestive system and it includes eating diverse foods, and supplementation should be with only bioaccessible forms. Because, for example, vitamin E, the most common form in our that we can buy is retinol acetate, which is a synthetic form, but it's not useful because our body cannot actually consume and to absorb it to a best extent, but much better to consume cod liver oil, for example. Vitamin E, which is the most common form, synthetic form, is alpha-tocopherol acetate. And we need to consider that in order for our body to absorb it, it should be in a group of tocopherols and tocotrienols. And it's better sometimes to take it from avocado, wheat germ oil, or nuts. And finally, we can have our delicious moment to appreciate the food we can eat and still experience beneficial effects. So, for example, here we can have baked peppers, and some ingredients include Bulgarian pepper, boiled beans, carrot, onions, garlic, tomato, fresh cilantro, cumin ground, and ground coriander. And we can bake it in the oven and have a beautiful dinner. And for people who love sweets, including me, you can prepare coconut panna cotta, and we just need for that coconut cream, water, 1 tablespoon of agar-agar, and natural sweeteners such as stevia. And this is a beautiful substitute for chocolate, for example, or any other sweets that we usually buy. And here are the references that I used for my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope that I was a little bit not confusing, and I hope to answer your questions. If you have any, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Kamila. Really appreciate it. That was phenomenal. I'll give a short comment before I open it up to everyone for questions. Yeah, I think that was really good. And regarding the nutrition scheme, I'll just mention there's going to be some variation for everyone's personal, optimal nutrition.
Yes, sure.
So obviously, like I would always take this as a guideline. The excluded products, those are pretty straightforward though. If those, if it's going to be something that does damage, then it's probably going to hurt nearly everyone. But in terms of like, how long you fast for, or certain times of certain supplements or certain foods, that is going to vary person to person. Something I thought was really interesting about how much acid or in the stomach to absorb vitamin C, zinc, and B vitamins. I'm always taking apple cider vinegar, and it's
Oh, wow.
It's interesting to think about. Maybe I should take that right before I take these other supplements.
Yeah, maybe this is a really good point, like to start researching, and basic research is the key. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again. Really appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and, yeah, thank you.